The skies above Earth shimmered with blue light as the Galactic Federation ships entered the atmosphere. People gathered in city streets, fields, and rooftops, their eyes wide with curiosity and wonder. For centuries, humanity had searched the stars for life, and now that life had come looking for them. Captain Elias Reyes stood on the steps of the Earth War History Museum, his hands behind his back and his uniform crisp, though faded with age. He had once served in Earth's final major conflict before peace spread across the planet. Now he was the keeper of the past, guarding rusted machines and old stories. A sleek silver transport landed nearby, its doors opening with a soft hiss. From within stepped tall, blue-skinned aliens with glowing eyes and polished uniforms. They walked gracefully, their movements too perfect to be human. At their head was Commander Varric of the Zarnai, a young and proud officer known across the galaxy for his tactical brilliance. Reyes watched silently as they approached. Varric looked around the museum courtyard with a raised eyebrow. "This is your military heritage?" he asked, amusement clear in his voice. "These ... relics? Look like abandoned farm equipment." The alien officers chuckled. One of them pointed at an old tank. It's paint-chipped, its metal rusting. "This one looks like it hasn't moved in 100 years. Are these for decoration?" Reyes smiled calmly. "They've been sleeping," he said, "like old lions. Quiet now, but not without teeth." The aliens laughed again, this time louder. Varric turned to Reyes with a mocking grin. "Perhaps one day we'll have a mock battle just for fun. You could bring your lions. I would enjoy watching them try to roar." Reyes didn't respond. He only nodded. Behind his silence was something deeper pride, and a secret only a few humans still remembered. The world had changed. Technology had moved forward, but the old machines weren't useless. They were designed in times of desperation, built not for beauty but survival. And they still worked. Later that evening, Reyes walked through the museum alone. The halls were lined with photographs, faded flags, and machines of war. He paused beside one particular tank-can, enormous Mark 9 Grizzly, the largest ever built by human hands. He placed a hand on its metal side. "They laughed at you today," he whispered, "but they don't know what you are." His eyes drifted to a small plaque beside the tank. It told the story of the Battle of Red Sand, how a single grizzly had held back an army, saving thousands of civilians. That machine had not moved in over a century, but its systems, Reyes knew, had been carefully maintained. Humanity might be at peace now, but had never forgot how to prepare. The next morning, news channels across the world showed clips of the aliens laughing at Earth's weapons. The reaction was mixed. Some humans were embarrassed, others were angry. But a quiet few engineers, veterans, and historians smiled knowingly. They understood what the aliens did not. In a hidden underground room beneath the museum, a light flickered on a dusty control panel. A green light, then another, and another. One by one, systems came online. The tanks, sleeping beneath layers of steel and stone, were waking up. Captain Reyes stood watching the lights. His voice was quiet but full of meaning. "They'll see. Soon enough," he said. "Old lions don't forget how to fight." The sun was rising slowly over the Earth War Museum as Captain Reyes stepped into the main courtyard. His boots crunched lightly on the gravel path. Soft wind blew across the field of forgotten machines, jeeps, missile launchers, all lined up like silent sentinels from another era. He wasn't alone for long. A shiny silver shuttle descended near the museum, landing with the same gentle hum as before. Commander Varric stepped out again, looking more confident than ever. This time, he had brought more officers with him. Some were scientists, others were military strategists from across the Galactic Federation. Reyes walked forward to greet them. "Another visit?" he asked with a raised brow. Varric nodded, arms crossed. "Yes, we've been studying your war machines. We find them amusing." His voice carried that same arrogance from before. But now, there was something else in it. Curiosity. One of the alien officers approached the tank called Grizzly and tapped it with his slender hand. "We were wondering," he said, "if your Old weapons are even capable of firing. Our technology has moved far beyond these things. Plasma shields, drones, you still use bullets and treads? Reyes smiled again, this time slightly wider. Maybe you'd like to test that theory. Varric's eyes lit up, surprised but pleased. A demonstration? Reyes nodded. Something better. Mock battle. You bring your troops. I'll bring my tanks. There was a pause. Then laughter, loud and unfiltered. You want to challenge the Galactic Federation with museum pieces. I want to remind you, Reyes replied calmly, that age does not mean weakness. Our machines were not built to impress. They were built to win. Varric considered for a moment, then nodded. Very well, 1 week from now, it's a neutral battlefield. No lethal weapons-only training rounds and non-lethal tech. We'll see if your lions still remember how to roar. The news spread fast. Across Earth, people were surprised, even concerned. We're going to embarrass ourselves, one headline. Read, how can we stand against a galactic force with ancient tanks? But in small workshops and dusty garages, a different kind of energy began to rise. Engineers came out of retirement. Mechanics who had once worked on battle tanks decades ago rolled up their sleeves. Old repair manuals were pulled from shelves. Parts were cleaned. Batteries charged. Sparks flew as welding torches lit up the night. They came from everywhere, young and old. Men and women, civilian and soldier. No one was ordered to help. They came because they believed. In the center of it all was Captain Reyes, walking among the crews like a quiet general. His calm voice gave instructions. His eyes studied every bolt and circuit. He knew the stakes. Were not just pride, they were respect. Humanity had been seen as children playing with toys. It was time to show the galaxy the soul behind the steel. Meanwhile, beneath the museum, deep inside the hidden hangars, something extraordinary was happening. The tanks were coming back to life. The Mark IX Grizzly, the Thunderbolt, the old Viper. Scout-all machines with names, histories, and scars were warming up their cores. Their old As, once simple and crude by modern standards, were beginning to sync with Earth's new satellite networks. They learned, they adjusted, they remembered each. Tank had once been a hero on a different battlefield. Now, they would rise again, side by side. One night, as Reyes stood watching his team work, a young technician approached him. Sir, she asked, wiping grease from her face, do you really think we can win? Reyes looked at her and nodded. Slowly, winning isn't just about technology. It's about heart, and we've got more of that than they can understand. Outside, the wind rustled through the lines of old tanks. Their metal bodies glowed under the moonlight, not like relics, but like warriors ready to rise once more. The air inside the underground hangar was thick with dust, heat, and a sense of purpose. Old machines that had not moved in generations were surrounded by lights, tools, and people. Sparks danced in the air as engineers welded metal plates. Tools. Clanged against armor. Wires were reconnected. Batteries were tested and replaced. In the center of it all stood the Mark IX Grizzly, a towering beast of steel in history. Nearly 100 tons of raw power, with a main cannon that once ended a siege. In minutes, now it rested like a sleeping titan, quiet but not forgotten. Captain Reyes stood beside the machine, eyes full of memory. You've waited long enough, he whispered. With a nod from Reyes, a technician pressed a button on a control console. Nearby, for a few seconds, there was only silence. Then the old tank let out a low hum, deep and rumbling like the growl of a waking lion. Green light flickered on its dashboard. Then another. Then all of them. All systems responding. The technician said, voice trembling with excitement. Power levels at 86%, AI reboot complete. The tank's lights came on, glowing faintly like eyes opening for the first time in years. Its internal voice, mechanical and old, echoed through the hangar. Unit Grizzly Mark IX, online, waiting. Mission parameters. The team erupted in cheers, some hugged. Others clapped. A few had tears in their eyes. They had done it. They had brought the past back to life. One by one, the other tanks followed. The Thunderbolt, a mid-sized mobile cannon, activated next. Then the Viper Scout, fast and clever, once used for battlefield recon and surprise attacks, which had its own memory, its own battles burned into its code. Across the hangar, voices called out updates, tracking systems online, turret movement operational, mobility systems functioning. It was like a family reunion, but for machines of war. They weren't just vehicles. They were stories made of steel. Veterans who had seen fire, dust, and sacrifice, while the aliens had their shiny hovercrafts and silent drones. Humanity had these, the heavy-footed giants that didn't hide behind shields, that charged into danger with courage and noise. Later, that evening, Reyes walked through the hangar alone. His boots echoed on the concrete floor as he passed the line of awakened tanks. He paused beside Grizzly, placing his hand gently on the warm metal. "You were never just machines," he said softly. "You were part of us, and now you're needed again." A distant rumble echoed above as more technicians arrived with parts, fuel, and supplies. The work didn't stop. It couldn't. The battle was just days away, and every hour counted. Meanwhile, in orbit, the Galactic Federation monitored Earth's preparation. Commander Varric received the reports with amusement. "They are really going through with it?" He laughed, fixing old tanks and thinking they can fight, but a senior officer beside him frowned. "Sir, there's something you should know. These machines, they've seen real war, human war, brutal, chaotic, and unpredictable." Varric shrugged. "You have drones and shields. You have wheels and cannons. What could possibly go wrong?" Back on Earth, Reyes gathered his small team inside the control room. Maps and digital layouts of the mock battlefield were displayed on screens. Hills, valleys, structures all carefully designed for the upcoming match. "Remember," Reyes said, "this isn't just a test, it's a message. They think we're weak because we're quiet, because we stopped fighting. Ouch. But we didn't. Stop thinking, we didn't stop remembering." He paused, then added, "They'll see that when these giants move again." Outside, the tanks sat waiting under floodlights, not as museum pieces, not as forgotten scrap, but as warriors reborn. And in that moment, it was clear humanity was ready. The day of the mock battle had arrived. A wide, dry desert valley had been selected as the battleground. It was far from any cities, surrounded by rocky hills, and watched from above by both human and alien drones. The sky was clear, the air still. A quiet tension hung heavy across the sand. Federation forces arrived first. Sleek hovercrafts floated inches above the ground, their polished surfaces glowing in the sunlight. Small scout drones zipped around like silver insects, mapping every corner of the terrain. Their soldiers stood tall, armor shining, weapons humming with energy. Commander Varric stood in the command zone with folded arms. His face wore a confident smirk. "Let's see what the humans have brought," he said to his officers. "If they even show up." Moments later, a low rumble filled the air. The ground began to tremble. From behind a ridge, one by one, the tanks appeared. The Grizzly rolled forward first, its massive frame casting a long shadow on the battlefield. Behind it came the Thunderbolt, the Viper Scout, and two more retrofitted machines, bearing scars of the past and new upgrades hidden beneath the old armor. They moved slowly, but with purpose. With every rotation of their treads, clouds of dust rose around them. The Federation officers stared in silence. No shields, no anti-gravity systems, plasma weapons, just steel, firepower, and will, Captain. Reyes sat inside the Grizzly, wearing an old helmet and headset. His voice came through the tank's comm system, steady and calm. "Remember your training. Follow the terrain. We've studied their tactics. Let's give them a lesson in ours." The battle began. A flare shot into the sky, signaling the start of the exercise. The alien drones were the first to strike, darting forward and firing simulated plasma shots. Their speed was unmatched, their targeting systems sharp. But the tanks did not panic. They didn't try to match speed. Instead, they used cover boulders, dunes, and trenches built into the terrain. The Viper Scout sped ahead, weaving between rocks and tagging two drones with EMP pulses. Both crashed into the sand. Disabled, the Thunderbolt held position behind a rise, its long-range cannon locking onto a Federation hovercraft. A single shot echoed like thunder, and the enemy vehicle was marked as destroyed. Varric frowned. "They're slow, but precise," he muttered. From within the Grizzly, Reyes smiled. "We may be slow," he whispered, "but we never miss." As the mock battle raged on, something became clear. The alien forces were used to predictable opponents, those who fought with patterns, relying on tech to do the thinking. But the tanks were being guided by humans who had studied not only tactics, but history. They thought like warriors, not machines. One moment, the Grizzly disappeared behind a hill. Moments later, it reappeared from another direction, flanking a Federation squad. The simulated blast knocked 3 units out of the exercise. Another tank drove straight into a cloud of smoke, only to emerge from the other side, tagging a stealth drone that thought it was hidden. Back in the Federation command center, frustration was rising. "How are they doing this?" one officer asked. Varric stared at the screen, now silent. He had mocked these machines, called them museum pieces. But they were fighting like champions, disciplined, unshaken, and dangerously clever. Meanwhile, Reyes sat in the command chair of the Grizzly, eyes sharp, voice steady. "This isn't just metal and gears," he said. "Into the radio. This is memory. This is legacy." The tanks, dusty and scarred, rolled across the battlefield like giants of old. Every shot, every move told a story of human struggle, courage, and survival, and the galaxy was finally watching. The desert echoed with the sound of roaring engines and thundering cannons. Dust clouds hung in the air. The ground shook as the ancient tanks of Earth pushed forward, refusing to stop. The Federation's sleek hovercrafts darted through the sky, quick and quiet. But they couldn't shake the heavy footsteps of steel giants closing in from the ground. Commander Varric stood in his mobile command station.
Oh, I'm no longer smiling.
He watched the screens in disbelief as his units were picked off, one by one. The old human tanks weren't chasing them. They were outsmarting them, these machines. "They're adapting," Varric said, confused. "They don't have AI, so how are they learning?" "They do have AI," his tactical officer replied, eyes wide. "But it's not just that. Tanks are being driven by humans. Trained ones. And they're using battlefield instincts. Instincts. Something no drone or hovercraft could copy. Something built through generations of conflict and sacrifice." Out in the field, Reyes was calm. Inside the Grizzly, he scanned the map. Thunderbolt, movies take the ridge. Viper cut behind the valley and disabled their scanning drone. "Copy that," came the reply. The Thunderbolt's cannon turned with perfect precision and fired. Another enemy unit was marked out of the match. The Viper Scout vanished behind a rocky slope, then reappeared to deliver a swift EMP blast. Taking down the drone, Reyes leaned back in his seat for a moment and closed his eyes. He could hear the tanks moving like an orchestra, the rhythm of gears, the song of strategy, the music of old warriors fighting one more time, and he remembered. He remembered the stories of his father, who fought in Earth's last great war. He remembered reading dusty journals, maps with red lines, black and white photographs of soldiers standing beside tanks, smiling, even after loss. He remembered why he had joined the service and why he had chosen to become the guardian of Earth's military history. "These machines," he whispered, "aren't just weapons. They're our voice." The Federation had believed this battle would be over quickly. Their units had shields, auto-targeting, and flight capabilities. But those advantages didn't help when facing enemies who didn't play by rules, who didn't rely on computers to make every decision. The humans used the land. They created traps. They made the enemy come to them. Every movement was deliberate, thoughtful, and packed with experience. One moment, the Grizzly appeared to be retreating, but it was bait. As 3 hovercrafts chased it, the Thunderbolt and another tank rose from behind a sand dune and fired at the exact moment. All three enemies were marked neutralized. In the Federation base, silence fell. "They're not just resisting," one alien officer said softly. "They're winning." "Commander." Varric turned toward the screen showing Captain Reyes's face inside the tank. He saw the calm, the focus, and the quiet confidence. "This man," Varric said slowly, "he knows war." At that moment, Reyes gave one final order: full push. Formation Delta. Show them how old lions hunt. The tanks aligned, rolling side by side in a perfect line. Dust exploded behind them as they moved forward like a steel wave. The ground shook under their power. Even though this was a simulation, every viewer, human or alien, could feel the weight of what was happening. It was no longer a friendly match. It was a reminder that humanity, though peaceful now, had once stood alone against darkness. Its weapons, though rusted, were born in fire. That its warriors, though older, still carried the roar of the past. And as the tanks advanced without fear, without hesitation, the galaxy began to understand. The desert echoed with the sound of roaring engines and thundering cannons. Dust clouds hung in the air. The ground shook as the ancient tanks of Earth pushed forward, refusing to stop. The Federation's sleek hovercrafts darted through the sky, quick and quiet. But they couldn't shake the heavy footsteps of steel giants closing in from the ground. Commander Varric stood in his mobile command station.
Howling, no longer smiling.
He watched the screens in disbelief as his units were picked off, one by one. The old human tanks weren't chasing them. They were outsmarting them, these machines. "They're adapting," Varric said, confused. "They don't have AI, so how are they learning?" "They do have AI," his tactical officer replied, eyes wide. "But it's not just that. Tanks are being driven by humans. Trained ones. And they're using battlefield instincts. Instincts. Something no drone or hovercraft could copy. Something built through generations of conflict and sacrifice." Out in the field, Reyes was calm. Inside the Grizzly, he scanned the map. Thunderbolt, movies take the ridge. Viper cut behind the valley and disabled their scanning drone. "Copy that," came the reply. The Thunderbolt's cannon turned with perfect precision and fired. Another enemy unit was marked out of the match. The Viper scout vanished behind a rocky slope, then reappeared to deliver a swift EMP blast. Taking down the drone, Reyes leaned back in his seat for a moment and closed his eyes. He could hear the tanks moving like an orchestra, the rhythm of gears, the song of strategy, the music of old warriors fighting one more time, and he remembered. He remembered the stories of his father, who fought in Earth's last great war. He remembered reading dusty journals, maps with red lines, black and white photographs of soldiers standing beside tanks, smiling, even after loss. He remembered why he had joined the service and why he had chosen to become the guardian of Earth's military history. "These machines," he whispered, "aren't just weapons. They're our voice." The Federation had believed this battle would be over quickly. Their units had shields, auto-targeting, and flight capabilities. But those advantages didn't help when facing enemies who didn't play by rules, who didn't rely on computers to make every decision. The humans used the land. They created traps. They made the enemy come to them. Every movement was deliberate, thoughtful, and packed with experience. One moment, the Grizzly appeared to be retreating, but it was bait. As 3 hovercrafts chased it, the Thunderbolt and another tank rose from behind a sand dune and fired at the exact moment. All 3 enemies were marked neutralized. In the Federation base, silence fell. "They're not just resisting," one alien officer said softly. "They're winning." "Commander." Varric turned toward the screen showing Captain Reyes's face inside the tank. He saw the calm, the focus, and the quiet confidence. "This man," Varric said slowly, "he knows war." At that moment, Reyes gave one final order: full push. Formation Delta. Show them how old lions hunt. The tanks aligned, rolling side by side in a perfect line. Dust exploded behind them as they moved forward like a steel wave. The ground shook under their power. Even though this was a simulation, every viewer, human or alien, could feel the weight of what was happening. It was no longer a friendly match. It was a reminder that humanity, though peaceful now, had once stood alone against darkness. Its weapons, though rusted, were born in fire. That its warriors, though older, still carried the roar of the past. And as the tanks advanced without fear, without hesitation, the galaxy began to understand. ChatGPT said, Zuru. Nietzsche Part 6, Ka 650 words. Kalika Gaya Hisa High. Yeah, part emotional, be high. Or turning point Badika Hajab. Aliens finally. Insignia Kaho. Samajna Shuru Kartain. Tone engaging or heart touching Rocky Gi. Hi. Third person style or simple English main. Part 6. Respect earned as the final echoes of cannon fire faded across the desert. A heavy silence took over the battlefield. Smoke drifted slowly in the hot air. Drones lay scattered, marked as disabled. Hovercrafts rested motionless, their systems deactivated by EMP pulses and well-placed shots. The match was over. The Earth team had not just survived. They had outmaneuvered and outclassed one of the most advanced forces in the galaxy, with old machines, old tactics, and something the Federation couldn't measure: human spirit. Commander Varick stood quietly in the command tent, eyes locked on the final report. His entire unit had been defeated in a simulated match by what he had once called rusted museum junk. But there was no anger in his expression, only disbelief, and then slowly, something else. Respect. He stepped out into the open and looked across the field. The human tank stood proud in formation, dust-covered and dented, but unbroken. Soldiers and engineers stood beside them, wiping sweat from their brows and smiling. For them, this wasn't just a battle, it was a moment of pride, a moment of proof. Captain Reyes climbed down from the Grizzly, his boots landing softly on the sand. He removed his helmet and looked around the field, nodding to his team. Had played their part. It's not just the machines, but the people, the ones who refused to be underestimated. Varick walked toward Reyes slowly, surrounded by silence. The Federation soldiers watched closely, unsure of what their commander would say. Reyes stood tall as Varick approached. There was no smugness on his face, only quiet strength. "We're surprised," as Varick said at last. Reyes gave a small nod. That was the point. Varick looked up at the Grizzly, still humming softly. "How? These machines. They are old, slow, outdated. But built with heart?" Reyes answered. "It's designed in times when humans had nothing but will, when every battle was survival." Varick was quiet. Then he spoke again, softer this time. "We believed we had nothing to learn from you. Your ways were ... behind us." Reyes turned to face the alien commander directly. "And now," Varick sighed, "now I believe we were blind." The Federation soldiers lowered their weapons. Engineers stepped forward, walking toward the tanks with curiosity and admiration. Some of them touched the armor, surprised to feel the heat of the engines still running. These were not dead relics. These were living legends. A young alien cadet looked up at the towering thunderbolt and whispered, "They fought like giants." News of the battle spread quickly. Across Earth, people celebrated not because of victory, but because they had been seen, truly seen. Longer as a young race of dreamers, but as survivors, as fighters, as equals. Even on Federation homeworlds, the footage was replayed over and over. The way the tanks moved together, the way the humans had planned and adapted. Commentators who had once laughed now spoke with awe. Later that evening, as the sun began to set over the desert, Varick stood beside Reyes once more. "I have spoken with the Council," Varick said. "Earth will be invited to join the Defense Circle, not as students, as allies." Reyes smiled not. For himself, but for all those who had come before him, the ones who had driven those tanks in real wars, the ones who had died, and the ones who had lived to teach. This victory belonged to all of them. "Thank you," Reyes said quietly. "We didn't fight for a seat at the table. They fought to remind the galaxy that we're still here. As night fell, the tanks were returned to their underground hangars, not as broken relics, but as heroes. And above them, in the quiet desert sky, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter for a planet that had earned the galaxy's respect. Weeks had passed since the mock battle in the desert, but the memory of it still lived strong in every screen, in every headline, and in the hearts of those who witnessed it. Across the galaxy, the name Earth was now spoken with newfound respect. No longer as the young, inexperienced world, but as a place with deep roots, brave hearts, and unstoppable determination. What had begun as a joke to many in the Federation had become a symbol of strength. In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Federation, hundreds of delegates from different star systems sat in silence as Commander Varick stood to speak. "We once looked down on Earth," Varick said, his voice strong and clear. "We mocked their rusted machines. But what we saw on that battlefield changed us. Their courage, their strategy, their memory. It reminded us of what we had forgotten." Looked toward the human delegation. At the front sat Captain Elias Reyes, dressed in his formal uniform, the Earth insignia shining proudly on his chest. "I recommend Earth be granted full membership into the Defense Circle," Varick continued. "Not because they asked for it, but because they proved they deserve it." Applause followed, loud, long, and honest. Reyes didn't smile immediately. He simply stood up and bowed his head in respect. Inside, he felt a deep warmth, not of pride for himself, but for all of humanity. This moment wasn't just his. It belonged to every person who had built those tanks, every mechanic who had oiled a gear, every soldier who had once sat inside one of those giants and fought for something bigger than themselves. Back on Earth, the War History Museum was no longer just a quiet place for school trips. It had become a global landmark. People traveled from across the world and now even from other planets to see the tanks that had once been forgotten. Children stood in front of the Grizzly wide-eyed, listening to tour guides tell the story of how it had moved again after 100 years of silence. Old veterans placed flowers near the machines. Engineers explained how ancient technology had been upgraded, not replaced. And everyone, young or old, human or alien, stood in quiet awe. One afternoon, Reyes returned to the museum alone. He walked through the halls slowly, past the photographs, the uniforms, the dusty medals. When he reached the Grizzly, he paused. The tank stood in its place once more, cleaned and polished, yet still carrying the same old soul. Placed his hand gently on the side of the metal. "You did well, old friend," he whispered. "You made them remember." The tank, silent as always, seemed to hum faintly beneath his palm. Maybe it was just his imagination, or maybe, just maybe, the machine understood. Later that evening, under the soft golden light of sunset, a ceremony was held in the museum courtyard. New plaque was unveiled, written in both human and alien language, to the machines that carried our history and the people who gave them life. Captain Reyes gave a short speech. "We often forget that history isn't just in books or stories," he said. "Sometimes it's made of metal and fire. Sometimes it's heavy and loud. And sometimes it sleeps until the world needs it." Again, as he stepped back, children ran to the tanks, placing flowers, drawing pictures, laughing and asking questions. The future was here, full of light and hope, but now built upon a foundation of remembrance. From orbit, Federation ships hovered peacefully over Earth, not as watchers, but as allies. And so the old war machines that once roared across dusty battlefields found peace and silence. But their message had already reached the stars. Humanity remembers. Humanity adapts. Humanity endures. And when the time comes again, it will rise, just with power, but with purpose. Agarap Chahin. Tomain is Pori Story Ka, PDF Banakar B, De Shaktahun, Yahar Part KO Full Chapters Main Expand Kar Shaktahun. Batai Opkokaya Chahi next.